Hi, my name is James Ashford. I built and sold a business called GoProposal, which was price and proposal software in the accounting industry. And the goal with that business was always to build it and sell it from day one. And I always think about this. I'm not quite sure where my journey of entrepreneurship started or why I always kind of saw entrepreneurship as my journey. And I can only think it's from seeing my parents when I was younger work very hard in jobs where they just weren't appreciated, didn't get paid what they were worth. My dad got shafted on his pension. My mum got a bunch of flowers when she left and they quibbled over her last month's pay, even though she was like the top person in the entire company. She ran a residential home. She was the matron of the residential home, and it was the top home in the country. And so just to see people hardworking treated like shit, yeah, I had family and I had friends who were business owners, and they seemed to just enjoy life a little bit more. They seem to have nicer cars. They seem to have more time and go on nicer holidays and do nicer things. And I kind of started to build up an association with freedom with that.
Very good. What is this? The only one, or is it like one of 10 or?
No, so I've started several. I think I've did my list of all my failed businesses on LinkedIn at some point. I think it was about 30, right the way from I had a girlfriend when I was 15, and she'd bought a rabbit, this fluffy white rabbit. And I was always good at making things. So product design was what I actually studied. So I built this rabbit hutch, and that was going to be my first business venture, making rabbit huts and selling them. But I used the wrong wood preservative, and by the following morning, the rabbit was dead. And so kind of that was the end of that not only rabbit and business, but also that relationship as well. Quite tragic. But tried many businesses. The one where it really started to gain traction was a marketing agency. And it was a good business, but then looking back on it, it wasn't really a business. It was a job. It was a job with assistants. And
Yes.
the big failing I had was the finances of that part of it. We just didn't have the full finance system in place in that business. And I thought it was doing well. And then I got a business mentor, and I remember sitting with him and kind of showing him everything and taking him through everything. And he looked into all the details. And in that meeting, it was like he'd lifted my blindfold off and we were on the edge of a cliff. And I was trying to back out of it as fast as I could, and didn't. And that business went over. And that was my first big slap in the face. And I remember when the liquidators came in, they said, it's the saddest business to liquidate because you had so much right, and it was just those few bits wrong. But you only need a few bits wrong to be a few degrees off course, and unchecked and over time, they will take you over the edge.
And
Um,
what hadn't you got quite right?
I always felt I needed more data, more financial data. So I never had monthly management accounts. It wasn't a
Right.
big business. It was like £250,000 business. Never had monthly management accounts. We never did a budget. We never did a forecast. So all of my financial decisions were like just gut instincts, right?
Yeah.
I think this feels right. So I remember getting a big project and someone said, look, we want to go ahead with you, but can we pay for it over 12 months? And I'm like, this is brilliant. I can land a big project and I'll get the money in over 12 months, not realizing that now I'm just providing a loan to this guy.
Yes.
And if that's the way you're then going to move forward, it will work eventually, but you've got a big gap to get over before it starts working again. But it felt right. And this decision felt right. And that decision felt right. And those gut feelings weren't right. So the financial data I was getting was effectively 18-month old data by the time I'd done your year-end accounts. And I'd sit there with my accountant, he'd run through it, and I'm like, yeah, I think that looks like what I did. Yeah, I think that's it. Where do I sign? And that was the end of it, rather than making informed decisions about, moving forward.
Okay. And then you went from, where did you bounce back to after that then?
So from there, I just started to study. I thought I've got to be able to figure this out. Like where are the gaps in my knowledge? So I did Tony Robbins' business mastery course. And then that kind of spun me off in different directions and just devoured every book I could, attended courses. And I wasn't just reading them out of interest. I was reading them like a student. Like I found all my notebooks and I've got all of my learnings from it. Like when you go through a book and it says, now do this exercise. And you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. I'll get around to that. I did every exercise in every book and just started to figure things out. And what I wanted to know was, what connects successful businesses? What are they doing behind the scenes? What are the things that they're all doing that makes them work? And I started to arrive at some fairly simple conclusions around them. And I had built some strong relationships in my previous business. And so I started to work as a coach to share those ideas with these businesses. A lot of them were around selling and the sales process, because if you can just solve that, if you can convert a higher rate, if you can charge more for what you do, if you can get them over the line quicker, if you can just solve that and create a great experience around that and make more money effectively, a lot of the other problems will just start to solve. And
Well,
so,
and so many businesses just they're in denial about that, and they just go, "Oh yeah, sales. Let me polish this other thing that works already well enough," because the
yeah,
idea of selling or talking to customers is terrifying.
yeah. And it came back to, and this is one of the conclusions I got. So, and I think this was, is it Peter Drucker? Is it Peter Drucker? Is that what it's called? Peter Drucker.
Peter
This was when it
Drucker,
was Tony
yeah.
Robbins teaching us, yeah. And it was that the primary function of a business, and I fall out with people like this, the primary function of a business is to make money. And everyone argues, no, it's not. It's my reason why I want to do good in the world. I'm saying, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful reason why. But if you don't make money, you can't do your reason why. Like, you can have the best reason why and make no money and you're stuffed. But you could have a really shit reason why and make loads of money and you'll succeed. So the primary function is to make money. And the only two ways to make more money is to either get more customers or to give more value to the customers you've already got. And both those things require selling. And so when you start to boil it down in terms of what you have to do, and you know this, you've only got so many metrics that you have to measure. There's not many things when you start to break it down. Get more leads, convert more, sell more to existing customers, sell more often, increase your prices. Like, there's only a few things that you can do to make more money.
I applied for a job recently that I didn't get, and I haven't applied for a job since the 1980s, I don't think. But
Yeah.
my kid's school was after a new chair of governors, so they decided not to pick me. But
Yeah.
in the interview, they said, "Have you got any questions?" And I said, "Look, there's room for 300 kids here, and we've only got 220.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Right? Yeah, you're not making enough money, so we can either charge more or we can have more children." And they're only two levers you get to pull, right? So I said, "Where? If you look at the schools in the city, like, are we the most expensive?" And they said, "No, we're about in the middle." I said, "Okay, well, what would have to be true for us to be the most expensive?" Because they'd already told me they didn't want any more children. So it's like, well, we'll have to put the prices up then. Often businesses just it's that simple, but they don't have a plan.
Yeah. They don't have a plan. And it's also connected to lots of other things that I've always been interested in over the years. So we can look at something logically and say, you need to put your prices up. And the work that I was doing with the last business was with accountants and bookkeepers and helping them to put their prices up. But associated with that is a fear of losing clients. So they have this fear of rejection. And then when you start to dig into the psychology of that, it's because their parents divorced when they were young, or the husband left them, or whatever. So they've got this innate fear of rejection. And now I've just told them to go and increase their prices, but they don't have this awareness of themselves. They're not aware. They don't understand it. And unless they can address that fear that they've got, which is a real genuine fear that's in all of us, fear of rejection, because we're kicked out of the tribe and now we're going to be eaten by saber-toothed tigers and die in the cold, etc. Like, this is hardwired into us. But if we don't have that awareness, we won't increase our fees.
There's a lack of feeling worthy to charge
Yeah.
more. You know,
Yeah.
not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Or,
is.
or we'll
But
come up with this bullshit excuse as to, I'll increase my fees when I've improved that process, when I've got that better, when we're in the new office, when I've got the new branding, whatever. There's always a reason
a thing that
why
you
they're
need to
putting it
do.
off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think prices. I've had I do quite a lot of work with clients with price. I think it's was it the CEO of Delta said, if two people on any one of my planes at any time are paying the same fare, I've done something wrong. Right. And so,
Yeah.
like, we know that it happens already. You know, there's also a sense of fairness. People say to me, "Oh, I can't put the price up for Fred because then he'd be paying more than Bob." It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's fine too, you know? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I've done a lot of work with clients where I said to one client, you know, "You're too cheap." Right. And they said, "Oh, I can't." They all a whole load of reasons. And I went, "Oh, we'll just do an experiment. Put the price up for 1% just this month."
Yeah.
And they came back and they went, okay, well, the salespeople didn't know the price. They had to look it up, but nobody else noticed. I said, well, do it again then. And so they put the price up again a year later, they'd put the price at 1% a month for 12 months.
Yeah.
And they were, they did it 2 years on the trot.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it was fine. It was fine. Nobody noticed. The problem was all in their head.
Yeah.
So why GoProposal in the end? Like, why are you solving a problem for accountants? Why did you end up there? Is that not a bit nichey?
It is a bit nichey. I'd solved it. So I started to work as a coach for these other businesses. And the first big breakthrough was a friend of mine, is a brilliant entrepreneur, built and sold his business several times. And he had a waste management company and it was doing 13 million in revenue. But they were struggling to sign new big accounts. So I said, look, let me run through your account process. It's just a dead simple thing to do. Let me start at the beginning and run through and see how easy it is for me to sign up for an account. And there was all these needless obstacles in the way, right? So it's quite interesting. But so they do a credit check, but as part of the process, because you sign up for a business account with them, they wanted you to get 2 references from other accounts you've got open. So it's a right pain in the arse. I've got to go and find things and print things and scan things and contact other companies. And at the end of it, I said, why do you get those references? You're already doing a credit check. Why are you doing the references? And so, well, sometimes the credit check fails. And so we have to fall back onto the references. That's all right. How often does the credit check fail? I said 1 in 40 times. Right? So why are you punishing 39 people for that 1 in 40 time? And they probably turn out to be a shit customer anyway, and you don't even want them. So why don't we just remove that? So it was really simple stuff. So remove some things out of the process, streamlined it, and introduce some simple technology. And one of my beliefs about the sales process, and comes from the fact that I'm just massively impatient, is that you should be able to do the deal there and then, whatever it is. There's always a way of simplifying it. Before this started, we were talking about working in a restaurant. So as waiters, you can walk up to a table of as many people as possible, sell them complicated meals that the chef has agreed the price of, whatever they want, starters, main courses, bottles of wine, whatever. And as a relatively junior salesperson in that position, I can sell a complicated meal because I've got a simple menu of services. It's alarming how many businesses just don't have that menu of services, right? So all I was doing was creating a very simple piece of technology with a menu of services that allowed anybody to sell a complicated client, a complex set of services, and to be able to do it there and then. The reason why businesses don't like to close the deal there and then is because they're shit scared of having the conversation about how much it's going to cost, right?
Yes.
So they get to the end of the proposal meeting, how much it's going to cost, I'll send it through afterwards, right? The reason they're doing that is because they're shit scared of sending it through now. Okay, cool. So you're not going to give it to me now while you've got my undivided attention. You are going to send it through at some indeterminate point in the future when I'm on the school run with the kids and wonder why I don't get back to you for 2 weeks, right? And then because I don't get back to you, you think it's got something to do with price. It's got fuck all to do with price. It's the fact that you just took it too long to get it to me. But now you're going to people will drop the price before they've even heard what I've said about it. So it's just the most ridiculous, drawn out process. So all I did was develop some simple tech that allowed them to close the deal there and then.
Yes. That not wanting to tell people the price thing is fascinating. It's fascinating. I mean, I'll be talking to a prospect and they'll say, well, you're going to send me a proposal. I said, why? I said, I send you an order form. And they said, well, you haven't told me how much it's going to be. I said, well, I'll tell you then. Right? Because then you get to manage when you tell them the price.
And the big time I learned it was actually for that waste management company. When I did a project for them. And the exact same thing. At the end of the call, said, are you going to send me a proposal through? I said, no, we can agree it now, right? So this was on the Monday. So we agreed it. I sent it through. They signed it on the Tuesday. On the Wednesday, they got a power cut to their building. They had 60 members of staff in a call center. The power cut lasted 2 weeks, and it took them 12 weeks after that to recover it. Meanwhile, I've already started the project. Imagine if I just waited 2 days, I'd have got caught up in all that shit, and I'd have been 4 months down the line before I'd have got my project back on the track again.
Oh, always. That's why, you want to get always in sales. You want to get the contract signed as soon as possible because stuff happens. Not to everybody, not all the time, but enough that it's worth signing it now. And
Yeah.
so you did that for the waste management business, and then what you thought, oh, this is a thing.
Well, I didn't think it was a thing. No, I just kept solving it for business after business that I knew that I was working as a consultancy with. So one of them was a plasterer. So he'd go out doing these plastering quotes and then go back and have to produce a quote, the quotes and send them out afterwards, right? He had 6 kids, right? So what I was interested in with him as somebody with children myself was, do you not have tea with your kids? So I know you've got Southerners listening to this. That's dinner for people down south. Tea is the evening meal that we have up north. But so I'm like, do you not have tea with your kids? So my biggest concern was not that he was getting his proposals out, but that he wasn't sitting with his 6 kids and his wife and having tea with them. I said, right, I'll help you to have tea with your kids because I'll get these proposals nailed while you're in the meeting. So then what happened was he was going to do the quotes, agreeing it there and then with a customer. He had an iZettle card reader attached to his phone, taking a card off the customer, putting it in, taking a deposit, getting a start date, going home and having tea with his kids. So like, that's all we need to do. It's dead simple, this.
And do you know what? It's so much better for the customer because,
Yeah.
Here we get people around all the time to, give us quotes. And the guy will turn up, he'll spend 2 hours here. And then 3 weeks later, I still haven't had a quote. Like, the job is no more complicated. In fact, he's forgotten what the job was by the time he gets home.
Yeah.
So why can't he just tell me it's going to be 10 grand? Why does he just tell me it's going to be 10 grand and take a deposit?
But that's in their mindset as well. Everyone will say, yeah, no, it's different for our industry. It's not as easy as that to quote. You can't do that. No, don't work like that. And I'm like, well, let's just make it simpler. I did it with a garden designer. The garden designer's actually just done our garden. And it's the same thing. It's too complicated. You can't just do a quote like that for people. I said, do me a favor. Go back with every quote you've ever done for a customer, ever, since the beginning of your business, and just put them in piles of rough groups. So roughly that price, roughly that type of product, just put it down. He came back and said, I'm absolutely gutted. He said, over the years, I've spent all this time doing proposals. He says, I've only ever done 3 proposals. There's only ever 3. So he went to his next customer. He rang me up. He said, instead of walking out with the headache of doing a proposal, I've walked out with a start date and a deposit. I'm like, mate, that's all we have to do here, right? The big thing, once you crack that, the next part of that, Dom, is that once you master that bit of the process, it's then, now let's remove you from it, because I don't believe in having, I know you talk a lot about salespeople's commissions, and I love your view on sales. My view is, let's not have a sales team. Let's have a sales culture. If I can get everyone in your business selling, and it goes back to, you go back to a pub, right? Go back to a restaurant. This is how most businesses work. So a waiter comes over to your table. What meals have you got? Well, what do you want? Well, do you not have a menu? No. You just, what did you have in the last restaurant? Tell me what you had in that. We'll figure something out. Okay. Burger, how much is it going to cost? Let me go and ask the head chef, right? So they will now go and speak to the head chef, the busiest person in the building, to try and figure out what the price is and bring them out to try and sell it to you. That's a ridiculous situation, yet that's what goes on in most businesses.
Have you read How Big Things Get Done?
No.
He said the 2 hardest things in the world to predict are building a nuclear power station and an IT project. He said, because there's no value to the customer until the end, right? So you can't turn on half a nuclear power station. He said, but he's looked at he's looked at all these different projects. It's exactly the same as your garden designer. He said, what people do is they go away and they try to build it up from scratch, how long they think it's going to take. And actually the route is, have we done one that looks vaguely like this before? It'll take the same amount of time. And he said, whenever he's done this massive research project globally on big projects, looking at, big, like HS2 and stuff like that, global big government projects. And they all end up taking twice as long and cost twice as much, because they build a project plans bottom up instead of going, has anyone built a bridge that looks vaguely like that? It'll take that. How long did it take? Oh, it took 2 years. It'll take 2 years. That's like, he just said works all the time. So all the way up from your garden designer to major global projects, it's the same. Have we done one before?
There's always a methodology. There's always a way. Let's simplify. Let's figure it out. So I just did it for business after business. And then I met an accountancy firm through a mastermind group that I was involved with. I said, look, I'll come and review your process. And so I went and had a look at and they said, look, we're pretty good at what we do. We're pretty up there. We're technologically advanced, all this stuff. So I went to do it, and I went through the process myself because I needed an accountant, and got to the end of the proposal meeting. I'm like, sounds great. Where do I sign? He said, it doesn't work like that. We have to send you a proposal. I'm like, okay, cool. No worries. So I left the meeting. So I'm in Doncaster and I've travelled to Manchester for this meeting, right? So I have to cross the Pennines. And for those that don't know the geography, Yorkshire is where God's from and Manchester is where it just pisses it down all the time. So that's the big difference. So I've travelled back and I remember kept checking my phone. He didn't say when he was going to send me the proposal. So I'm looking at my phone. Got to the train station, didn't get it. Got back home, didn't get it. Got back to my wife. I said, right, I found a brilliant accountancy firm. We signed up for them. It's going to be whatever it was, 500 quid a month or 700, whatever it was, 600 quid a month. So, oh my God, that's a fortune. You know, what are we getting for that? I'm like, I have no idea, but it sounded brilliant. Okay. So she's like, right, well now, she said, I think you're spending too much on that. Go and speak to your brother. So my brother's got a £5 million business. What is he spending with his accountancy firm? Well, the answer is not enough, right? But now he's going to be my advisor as to what I should be getting. So now I'm talking myself out of it because I can't justify what that decision was. Where had I got a proposal, I would have signed up for it there and then. Fast forward a couple of weeks, I ended up getting the proposal. I signed up with them, but I said, look, I'm just going to give you some feedback on your process. It's shit. And he said, but we're better than everyone else. I said, yeah, but I'm not comparing you to everyone else. I'm comparing you to the fact that I booked my train ticket on my app. I booked my Uber when I pulled into the train station. I saw a book in your office. I ordered it on Amazon. This was true. There was a book in their office. I ordered it on Amazon. I had the book the next day. I've still not had his proposal. So I'm not comparing you to other accountancy firms.
In your book, you make that observation. You say, look, people are not comparing your business. They're comparing their experience in life. Yeah. And as I was reading that, I thought, that's right, because I still order stuff and it arrives. And then I go, now I need to send it back. Oh, hang on. I need to ring them so that they can give me an RTM number so I can pay to send this back to them. And it's like, it's like, this is so hard. Why have you made this so hard? Why do you need to employ somebody to tell me I can send it back to you? That I could surely. And I opened something the other day and it's like, it said, I'm doing a charity bike ride thing. I'm riding from Geneva to Milan in 5 days, 574 miles or kilometers. Anyway, I bought a top and it needed to go back. There's a URL. You type the URL in, or there was actually a QR code, and it takes you straight to the post office website where you can print a return label, and you just wrap it back up, stick the return label on, and it also your postman picks it up from your house. It's like perfect. That was like. Yeah. And then I've got another thing and I've got to ring these other people up to get it. It's just hard. And like, you just think, well, it's a bit like when you see like Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, you think, if I was running a restaurant, I would have been to other people's restaurants. So I would have known that my restaurant was shit, but you're right. People don't eat their own dog food. Because I often say to CEOs who are struggling to hire, I say, have you tried to get a job in your company? Let's have pull up the last job ad you ran as a company, and they've never seen it, and it's shit. It's like the dullest thing in the world. It's like, would you fucking apply to work for you? No, of course you wouldn't. Okay, now go and see if you can go through your process to get a job here. It'll be awful, and the customer thing will be the same. But if the customer thing isn't slick, the employee thing won't be slick either. There's no bit in your business is accidentally amazing if some part of it's terrible.
Back to eating your own dog food, they'll be impatient with things in their world, but then think that doesn't apply to their business. So you'd be like, you want to watch a film on Netflix, you're like, it's not fucking there, shit, I've got to now click on to Now TV. I've got to click 2 more buttons to get the thing I want. I've got to buy it on Amazon Prime. That's taken me 2 whole minutes, right? Whereas years ago, you drive into Blockbusters and trying to find a video with an elastic band around it or whatever, right? Do you know what I mean? But now we're just infuriated that we have to wait, a minute or 2 minutes to get the actual film we want. Yet we think that customers will be patient with us to buy something, and it's ridiculous. So I gave them this feedback, the accountancy firm. I said, look, I can sort this out for you. So I developed some software, and it wasn't just the software that I developed. It was the changing the mindset, changing the sales approach, creating a great experience around it all, sending some videos beforehand, so making a really rich experience, stopping the business owner, Paul, being the person that can produce the proposals, and training 13 members of staff in how to use this software, putting a menu of services in. So although the software was relatively simple, it was a cultural change and an education as well. Didn't think anything more of it. And then a friend of mine said he told his accountancy firm that he was working with in Leeds about it. And he said, Northern accountants have heard about it. So he rang me, he said, how do I get it? And that was it. It was the spark I've been looking for years. And I went and sat in a hotel in Manchester, and I rang my two devs that I'd worked with for 10 years. And I had this idea. I said, I've got this theory as to how we can build a SaaS business really cheaply. Okay. Can you please tell me where it's going to fall down? So the theory was, can you build it with a WordPress multi-site? So a WordPress multi-site has the same structure as a piece of software in that it has separate installs for each. But it has all the security built into it. It has passwords, logins, all of these things. No one would ever necessarily know it was WordPress. Large parts of the engine are constantly being worked on and improved all the time. So if we build on top of that, could this work? So my theory was, I'm wanting to build an aeroplane. There's no point in building the fucking engine. I might as well just go to Rolls-Royce and say, can I put your engines in my plane and will you maintain them forevermore for free? Thank you. And we'll build a plane around it. And we did it. And we always thought that when we got to about 100 customers, it would start to creak and we'd have to re-platform it, whatever. And it never creaked. And then it got to like 500 customers, then 1,000 customers. And then I started to dig into this and I found other SaaS businesses built in the same way with 10,000 installs or 100,000 installs. And ultimately, that's what we built and that's what we sold. And it kept the costs so low.
Well, and I was thinking you were selling to maybe not the most discerning SaaS purchasers in the world as accountants. There might have been something there as well, but they were buying. It didn't matter that it wasn't a piece of software. It was a process flow.
Yeah, but it was rapid. It meant that we could make changes very, very quickly. It was very stable. And when we came to sell the business, they brought in two companies to review it from a security point of view, and they put us through. They want to earn their money. These companies, when they're trying to when you're going through due diligence, they want to check everything out, and they found a few things. And I always remember we'll get onto the sales process, I'm sure, but they on the Monday, we got this report back with, these are the red lights, green lights, amber lights, etc. And we had to go on a meeting with them on the Thursday. And they said, right, so this is why we've given you, this is where it's kind of doesn't quite work, etc., or issues that need resolving. I said, yeah, I really appreciate everything you've shared with us. Thank you. We've fixed them all. I said, we only gave you the report on Monday. I says, I know. And we've solved everything between now and then, with the exception of these two minor things here. And they're like, well, how have you solved that? I'm like this. And they were just, what they were so impressed with is not that we'd solve them, but our approach to listening to them and saying we just want to get better. So my point being is that it was actually very stable and very secure, and just an interesting way to build a software business cheaply.
Well, and also you sort of fell into the customer group, but you also, one of the things you told me when we were speaking a few months ago is you said that you, right from the beginning, you designed it to sell it, or you thought you'd sell it. So you had sort of a version of your logo which said, X and Y, owned by X and Y, owned by Y and Z, owned by ABC. So you from day one, you were engineering something that you thought would have value to a strategic buyer. But why did you think that? Because that's not a normal thought process for people.
No. So everything that I'd learned when I was kind of below ground, when my previous business went under, was like, if you can create an asset, like you've created something of value that could be sold, beyond the money it generates now, there's an additional layer of value that you've created, and that you've got this asset that could possibly be sold. And it might never be sold, but what you don't want is the opportunity to arrive to sell it and you're not ready to sell it. You want it to be ready to be sold as early as possible. But here's the other quirk with that. If your business is ready to be sold, it's also fully systemized. It's got a playbook that describes how every part of that business can run. It's got a team that runs it. It's got management in place, and it's got me fully extracted from the business. So we have to get to those points. Well, if you can get to those points, it's also franchisable, scalable, can be taken into different countries, can, also achieve everything else that you want it to achieve. So if you can get it to a state of exitability, it also ticks all of the other boxes. It's the most scalable it can be. et cetera, et cetera. And so I believe that every business should get it to the point of being exitable as fast as it can be.
Yes. I call that being exit ready. Yeah, we work with clients on
Exit
that all
ready,
the time. The other thing is that it means that the owners can be doing the bit of the business that they enjoy,
yeah.
as opposed to grinding away doing the thing that they're not happy doing. Because there's,
Yeah.
often people ring me up and they go, I just hate this business now. I'm now spending all my time doing work I don't enjoy. Help me.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it brings you peace as well, I think, Dom, because, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, well, certainly my journey was just like a state of constant paranoia, like just what can go wrong? Where can this fall down? And you're constantly trying to figure out where it can go wrong. But the other big thing is that you don't know what the future holds for you. You just don't. Anything can happen. Your personal circumstances can change, or you need to pivot or do something different. And so by getting it to the point of being exit ready, you've also got the greatest number of options ahead of you
Yes.
to be able to kind of contend with whatever comes your way as well. So, so the business was in a position to sell from as fast as possible. And every member of staff that came on board was told that, and that they'll be part of a very interesting journey. They'll have a great story to tell at the end of it.
And how quickly did you go from zero to exit?
5 years.
And how big was it when you sold?
When we got to 1 million in revenue, that's when we started to get interest and people started to put offers our way. And then by the time we'd completed and found the right company to buy us, it was at £1.5 million in revenue.
And how many staff did you have by then?
It was interesting. I was telling someone about this today. When we were sat around the tables with these businesses, they estimated we had about 50 members of staff based on the output. Like, we were the most dominant marketing. We would produce more content than anyone else in our space, including Xero, including QuickBooks. We would have 600 people onto our webinars consistently every time. Like, our output was high. Our net promoter score was in high 70s, 78, I think it was. Our staff, our net promoter score, our employee net promoter score was in the 80s. Like, we were a world-class business, which was always my goal, with high output across everything, high retention rate, etc. So people estimated that we had 50 members of staff, and we had 11 at the time of selling.
Fantastic. How did you manage with 11? How many did you still only have 2 devs, or did you outsource bits of it, or?
They were both outsourced devs to start with, one main one and one kind of supplementary one who completed a small part of it. And I always remember when we finished the original kind of MVP and launched it, my dev said, right, I'm only working Wednesday afternoons for you now. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I've got all these ideas and things I need to do. And what if something goes wrong with it? He says, well, look, we'll set up if something is genuinely urgent, this is what we mean by urgent, like the app's gone down, or people can't make a payment or whatever. Like, so we agreed what urgent was, what high priority was, medium priority, etc. He said, if it's urgent, if it's a Sunday night, I'll jump on it, we'll fix it, it's not an issue. Everything else can wait till Wednesday afternoon. And it was the most annoying thing I could have been told, because I had all these ideas. It turned out to be the best thing ever, because what it meant was I had to prioritize what is the next feature that we're going to add into this app. And so it just slowed down our development, and we couldn't add too much to it. So we had him for the first 3 years, I think, just him. And then it was only in kind of the third, fourth year that we brought in a lead developer and then another developer after that. So at the time of selling, we had 2 full-time internal developers, and we still had the external one. We're still on great terms with him in case we needed him for various things, but 2 devs at the time.
And how many customers was 1.5 million?
1,000, 15,
all
1,000, 1,500
all in the UK, all accountants?
No, 80% in the UK, and then the rest was split with America and Australia. We had some in Ireland. We had some in Norway as well. For some reason, I just became a big deal in Norway, and which was great because it forced the language key to be created.
Yeah.
So people were kind of trying to talk me out of it, but I just wanted it in a different language. Well, then when we came to sell and we sold to Sage, they had interest all over the world, including in French, Canadian, France, Spain, Germany. And so we already had the concept of a language key there.
Well, and that must have made it easier having built it on a WordPress platform, because they'd already done the back-end language problem's already been solved if that's a requirement.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the other big thing is the way we scaled it from a marketing perspective is I was already well versed in all of Daniel Priestley's books.
Yeah.
And so key person of influence, I'm like, right, I know how to become a key person of influence. Watch this. So I wrote my book and just decided I was going to post a video every single day across every social platform because it was cheap. Like it was cheap and I could produce good content and no one else dare do it. The big companies can't churn out content fast and produce videos fast because there's too much bureaucracy. They have to sign everything off. And the smaller companies just, whether they're not brave enough or they don't have much material or whatever. So I just saw this gap and thought, I'm just going to dominate this sector. And so no one knew me in the accounting space at all. So I wrote a book. I gave 10% of the proposal company, GoProposal, to the original accountancy firm where it was born out of in exchange for me getting 10% of his accountancy firm. So now when I stood on stage, I could say, as the director of an accountancy firm. So it just gave me I got instant credibility. So I had the book. It became the best-selling book. It still is the highest-rated book in the accounting industry for kind of practice management in the world on Amazon. Produced lots of content. But I remember what was interesting was, I rang Daniel Priestley up and I said, right, I know you've helped me with this key person of influence thing, but I'm now coming to sell my business. I now need to stop being the key person of influence. How do I do it? And he said, get your team to be key people of influence. So then we passed it on and we started to get them to do it. And then when we sold the business, what was really interesting was all of these assets that we'd created, the books, all of the videos, we then just started, especially because AI had kicked off then as well, they all started to get transcribed into different languages. So the German version of the book, Spanish version, French version, and all of my videos, I can't remember what the software is now, but it instantly translates it into different languages and lip syncs you to all of these different languages as well. So all of the assets now, like GoProposal now is just getting smashed into France. Like they're just taking over France with it. And I don't need to be involved anymore because they've got all of the videos, all of the books and everything just to storm through.
And so you got acquired by Sage for
Yes.
£1 gazillion.
Yeah.
They wanted to buy you because they didn't want somebody else to buy you. I think you said to me in the past, you got them into a nice competitive bidding war with multiple people.
We'd done a lot to get the multiple of the business up, and it was very intentional from the start. So I keep going banging on about Daniel Priestley, but he's got another book called 24 Assets, which is all about how do you turn all of this IP in your business into assets. And I remember seeing this slide from him about all these things that you can do to push the multiple as high as possible. So we've been very intentional about that from the start. And we've done very well. But then what I always hold my hands up to is blessings, good fortune, good luck, whatever you want to call it, in that it was just after COVID. And so the price of software businesses had been pushed up. Proposal software was becoming much more prevalent in the accounting space. And there are a few businesses that really wanted it, they didn't want to build it out themselves and wanted to take it. But also because we had such good standing in the industry with the books and the credibility and the high net promoter score, great perception in the market, it wasn't the number. Are they the number one? Well, they're not. Sage was the number one really from a size perspective, but kind of from a coolness point of view, probably zero. I'm not quite sure of the positions there, but it really fed into what Sage were looking to do was to grow their perception in the market. They were already the biggest player really, but they wanted to kind of be associated with the cool kids, I guess. Xero had done all the cool stuff, and and we were one of the cool kids, so it helped to boost them as well. And so there was certainly good luck involved as well, Dom. We like to think as business owners, it's all down to me. The harder you practice, the luckier you get and all that stuff. But good luck does happen.
Yeah.
And bad luck happens as well, right? But although good luck happened, I had everything in place ready to take advantage of that good luck. Like I was ready to sell. Everything was packaged up with a neat bow on it straight away. When someone's, the first thing that people start saying to you is, well, can you send me through your last 3 years of monthly management accounts? Within 5 minutes, yeah, there you go. That's it, done. Like I don't have to look around for it. And I always think that it's not just that you've got them, it's how good are they and how fast can you get them to somebody
Yeah.
proves whether you've got your shit in order or not.
you didn't take the highest offer. You took an offer that shared your success with the team as well, which not everyone would do. So hats off for you for that.
It was two things, Dom. It shared the success with the team, and they also were much more in line with our values. So the operations director for GoProposal was my niece, Heather. Now, I didn't appoint her as ops director because I was too close to her. So I brought in other people to do the final decision making on that. But she's just a superstar. And I remember us getting to this crossroads, which is: do you bring in an ops director, 100K, who's proven and seasoned, etc., but that might not be a good culture fit, or do I take a junior person who's the best culture fit, who I believe in, I back, and let's train her up and give her the skills that we need? So we went with her, and we had a lot of, maybe half the team were women, which perhaps for a software business is fairly unusual. Our client base, lots of female accountancy firms that they use our product because they find it. I remember one of them saying it's their shield of confidence when they're in a proposal meeting, and so they used it a lot. And when we went to this other company to buy us, we sat and did the management presentation, and at the end of the meeting, it's nearly all blokes around the table, right? And they said to us, that is the best management meeting we have ever experienced. You have just set the bar for how management presentations and how this should be. So I was buzzing when I left.
Yeah.
And Heather was with me. And as we left, she said, how do you think that went? I said, it was brilliant. Like, they loved us. It was great, etc. I said, how do you think it went? She said, I didn't think it went great. I said, why not? And she said, because every time I asked the question, they answered you.
Oh.
And I'd not spotted it. And she said, if that's how they treat me there, how will they treat Danielle? How will they treat Nuala when they're working with us? And I'd just not spotted that. And then when we went to Sage, it was a much more balanced meeting that we had, and Heather was given a lot of respect in that meeting. And so just culturally and values wise, it was the right fit for us.
And so did your plan come to pass? You sold it and you were out straight away?
I had a 2-year, it wasn't necessarily an earn out. They were just deferred payment. So they wanted me to work with them for 2 years and to help it land. And I also didn't feel like my work was done anyway. Like, I wanted to stay and do it. It was quite a steep learning curve for me, because I've gone from being this entrepreneurial guy that can do whatever I want and blah, 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 to now working in a corporate structure. And the difference between corporate and, there's many differences, but one of the big differences I see between corporate and entrepreneurship is that entrepreneurs, you're playing to win. Corporate, you're playing not to lose.
Yeah.
And it's a very subtle difference, but what wasn't quite aligned with my thinking. And so I was very fortunate that the person that was put kind of my sponsor effectively shielded me from a lot of stuff. And so it was a fairly good experience, as good as an experience as I could have expected. I dropped off a cliff at the end of that experience.
And what are you doing now?
I'm working as a non-exec for a couple of businesses that I've been in. One's in the accounting space still. One's a football academy that I've been involved with for a long time. Just before I came off the call with you, I've got a tech business that wants me to work with them as well. And just trying to figure out my space in what's next in the world. I was originally not going to do anything, right? And this is
what, like retire?
Well, not retire. I don't know, right? I had this bullshit story, which I'll tell you about. But this is part of my reason why I dropped off a cliff. So when I say I dropped off a cliff at the end of it all, like, I proper crashed. Like, I had a full breakdown. And I don't say that lightly. And if you just said to me like 5 years ago, someone's had a breakdown, I'd be like, get a grip. What are you talking about? Like, I'm from like a tough mining village where, especially men, you don't have breakdowns. Get on with it. Like, we don't even have a medicine cupboard in our house. We just serve our kids a cup of shut the hell up. Like, that is our approach. I remember once, this is true, right? The school rang me up and said, your son's green. They said, his son's green. He's going to be sick. You need to come pick him up. I got to school and they said, are you taking him home? I said, no, I want to go see him. So I went back and saw him, and he didn't look great, I'll be honest. But I said, do you think you can get through the rest of the day? He said, I think so, Dad. I said, okay. So I went and looked under the sink. I gave him a bucket. And I said, right, get back into the class. And I went out, and she said, Are you not taking him home? I said, I'm not teaching my kids that if you feel sick, you go home. I'm teaching my kids that if you feel sick, you grab a bucket and you crack on. So, and that was that. So I've got like a tough love approach to stuff, right? Completely true story. So, but I was literally, and when you look at a breakdown, at the end of something, you sometimes need to break down and fully break down in order to be rebuilt for the next version of what you're becoming and what you're doing. But this is the big thing that I learned, and only learned this recently, Dom. I was doing what I was doing to make the accounting industry better, to create a great environment for my team to flourish. They were my why, to help this is my reason why that I gave, and it is true, partly true. I wanted to help accountants to better serve their customers and to help their businesses to have a full finance function, to sell them everything they needed, not just what they wanted, because I wanted them to help their clients to avoid the mistake I got into. Like, I wanted to help them to fully invest into the finance function of that business. And I did that. I've had a lot of impact on lots of businesses. That was one of my reasons why, my public reason why. The other reason why was I wanted to give my family a better life. I wanted to be able to give them opportunities that perhaps I didn't have, my children a better education. I wanted to free up my wife from work because she had a very tough job in a mental health institute. I wanted to live in a better house, all this stuff, right? All these reasons why that you give. And then what happened was I sold the business and achieved all my reasons why. Done it. Ticked every single box, right? Ended the business and fell off a cliff because I'd not addressed the ultimate reason why entrepreneurs do what we do. And the reason why we do what we do is we just fucking love it. We love doing it. That's it. There's nothing more to it than that, right? But we give these bullshit reasons so that when your missus says, why were you up till midnight last night? And why were you up at 4 o'clock this morning cracking on with it? Or why do you need to have that week in San Diego at that conference or whatever? We give these bullshit reasons. It's to make our life better. It's for this, it's this. No, it's not. It's because I just love doing what I'm doing. But we daren't give that reason. And so what happened was I'd achieved all my reasons why, the external bullshit surface reasons why, but I'd not honored my ultimate reason why, which I just love entrepreneurship. I love the grind. I love the fight. I love the scrap. I love figuring shit out. I love learning stuff. And so that's what I have to get back into.
How long were you lying on the couch for?
It was the side of the road. I got out of the car. I was literally on my hands and knees at the side of the road thinking the world was coming to an end. And my wife picked me up and got me back in the car. And then I had counseling and therapy, which got me through my first part. And then once I'd started to kind of get the scaffolding up as I saw it, I then started to get mentors around me. So I didn't want to kind of dwell on shit. I wanted to kind of get on with things. So I got these 2 mentors. I'm still working with both of them now. The scaffolding's up. I'm rebuilding. And this guy works with CEOs who've kind of entrepreneurs, who've built and sold the business. And he calls it kind of getting ready for part 2. The second half. Like the first half's over. And now we have to let some things go. And now we're preparing for the second half. But the other thing as well, Dom, is when you're going through all this shit, you can't tell anyone. Fucking got all this money. I've got all these millions. All my dreams have come true. My world's falling apart. Like, fuck, you can't post that on Facebook.
You're not gonna get much sympathy.
I wish I had your problem.
Well, they'll be saying, look, here's a cup of shut the fuck up.
Grab a bucket and crack the fuck on. I'll pick you up at home time. You know what I mean? So I found it really fascinating. It's been as entrepreneurs, we have to have great self-awareness to understand why are we doing what we're doing? Like, where is this really coming from? What we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to satisfy. You know, I thought that when I sold my business that all the trumpeters were going to come out and I was going to be carried down the street on people's shoulders and shit. And the big thing was it didn't change how I felt. Where I get the most buzz and joy from life is, like I say, in the scrap, in the dirt, growing stuff and trying to win.
Very good. Well, look, Selling to Serve, your book, I thought was fantastic. And so not just for accountants, but for anybody thinking about selling anything which is a service, I think.
Yeah.
You know, because it's you go through that, some of the points you've made around, creating a menu of services, but also creating some theatre around the sales process so people get a sense of how you might treat them when they're a customer versus not sending them a proposal or often offering them to buy. But are there any other books that you've got inspiration from, or you've liked along the way, or maybe even podcasts you listen to?
A few of my kind of foundational books were E-Myth Revisited, which is very good. It's still an old one, and not all the school of thought is still solid in that, but it's still a very good book. And if you balance that with Lynchpin by Seth Godin, they kind of balance each other out. So they were kind of two good books. And then Built to Sell by John Warrilow, that was a real, inspiration for me that helped me to build and sell it. I love the Daniel Priestley books, Key Person of Influence, Oversubscribed, 24 Assets. He's just able to take complicated concepts and package them up in understandable, actionable ways that have just been really profound. I'll tell you a fantastic marketing book, They Ask You Answer. Have you read that?
Oh, yeah.
By Marcus Sheridan. Unbelievable, just so brilliant. And like, you read a lot of marketing books and they kind of build on your current understanding, or kind of is added to what I already got. That was a proper change of things for me, that's the one I really highly recommend. I think your book's great. Like, I just resonate so much with your book, and again, you've done the same thing in that you're very challenging in your concepts about, like, and I've done a post about it. You inspired me to do a post about it, about not charging, giving salespeople a commission, just like, and I always thought that was like a conclusion I'd arrived at, and I was never quite sure about it. And when you kind of wrote it, I thought, it must be right. If Dom's saying it, it must be right. So just very practical, actionable, and things that I fully endorse. I really got a lot from that. I dip in and out of podcasts. I'm not like a prolific podcast listener, which I probably should be. I like the high performance podcast. Do you know who's the people on the who are the people that do that?
I can't remember, but I can see them.
One of them I really like, and one of them really irritates me. I'd like to develop a piece of software that could take his voice out, so I can listen to the other one and the main and the guest. But I find that really, I think that's probably my main go-to one. I used to like the Stephen Bartlett stuff, but he winds me up a bit, and he kind of gone off track now. The business stuff, like if there's a good guest on it, I will go and listen to that. But it's mainly for the guest there. There's not a lot of, I also like Joe Rogan as well, just for the randomness of his stuff. He interviews some really great people, depending on what the theme is. I just think anyone, just surrounding yourself with positivity, Dom, people who are talking about ideas. There's so much shit in the world. Like, you've got to block the news out, block as much social media out as you can, and just try and get your dose of positivity. It doesn't matter where it comes from, but that has just got to be your go-to thing. Starting each day, I start each day when my feet at the floor, I say thank you. Above ground, thank you is my first words that come out of my mouth each day. I will try and sit quiet. I'll say a prayer for the day for whoever is listening. And I will go for a walk and just try and kind of ground myself, and then try and listen to something positive, make sure I'm putting good stuff into my world, and block not only negativity out, but negative people. The more people you can just get rid of that just take your energy, just ditch them people as fast as you can.
James, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Dom. Thanks for having me.